Hello, Buckeye fans. We are Patrick Murphy and Steve Hellwagon, live from the Cotton Bowl here at AT&T
Stadium, Jerry World.
Yep, the Buckeyes, the Longhorns, the college football playoff semifinal will kick off in, where are we?
2 hours and 45 minutes,
There you
roughly.
go. So, Steve, let's start. Your biggest key to the game for this game. What do the Buckeyes need to do?
Yeah, I think everyone's all wrapped around the axle about Jeremiah Smith and big plays and Will Howard this and throwing the ball deep and all that. It's not going to be that easy. They're not playing Oregon. They're not playing Tennessee. They're playing Texas. And Texas is a much better team defensively, particularly in the secondary, I think, than either of those two teams. So I think the key, in my mind, is that Will Howard takes what they give him, which it could be underneath. It could be a Mecca Buka on the cross routes, and then go into Jeremiah Smith maybe secondarily. Going to have to probably run the football in this game as well, which, the numbers last week against Oregon were a little bit stilted, and of course the game was out of control early. I mean, they're up 34 to nothing in the middle of the second quarter, up 34 to nothing. So running the football, you ran the ball in the second half to just keep the clock moving. But Travion Henderson had a 66-yard touchdown run. You take that out of their total, it dips below 120, and they had 30 carries aside from that. Getting awful feedback there. 30 carries for just under 120 yards. My math tells me that's less than 4 yards per carry on the other 30 carries. So they've got to do a much better job with Judkins and Henderson establishing the run. Texas has got a great defensive tackle, Alfred Collins, a great linebacker, Anthony Hill Jr. And, it's going to be difficult, I think. It's not going to be as easy, perhaps, as it was against Oregon.
Yeah, well, and, we thought that Oregon would be a challenge. Obviously, they cruised through that one. For me, I agree with everything you said. I think they're going to need to be able to run the ball. But Chip Kelly and the way he's calling these games, these last
It's been outstanding.
Yeah, and some of the play design that they've had. You mentioned that Travion Henderson run. The motion before that with the Mecca Buka and the blocking, obviously, that they had on that play. Great stuff. The motion for Ibuka was on Jeremiah Smith's second touchdown. Completely had Oregon's defense. You're trying to figure out who's where. Jeremiah Smith's lined up basically right next to the tight end and puts a move on the safety. He's free. The way that Chip Kelly is calling these things has been the best we've seen from Chip Kelly all year. Him and Ryan Day talking about how he's been even more involved with the football side of things when he doesn't have to worry about all that other stuff that takes place during the season. So I think that's going to be key. You mentioned that Texas defense. When you've watched them, why is it going to be more difficult for Will Howard in this offense?
Well, they have an outstanding secondary. I mean, I don't know the pronunciations all that well, so I apologize. Judd D. Barron was the Jim Thorpe Award winner, got that award over Caleb Downs from Ohio State. And, he is going to be matched up, it would seem, with Jeremiah Smith or Mecca Buka. Of course, what Ohio State did to kind of counter Oregon last week was they brought Smith in motion and threw him the ball, almost as kind of a little flare pass or I don't know how you describe it, a screen of some sort. And then G. Scott was selling out downfield for him, and he blocked it perfectly. He split the defenders, and he was gone. Can you count on that play hitting again? Probably not to that degree. But, I think that Texas has got outstanding players across the board. You look at the Georgia game in the SEC championship. I think it was like 22-19 or something along those lines.
Overtime.
Yeah, they held Georgia. Again, it was Georgia without Carson Beck, or at least for a good portion of the game. So, I look at it. One of the things I think about is the fast start. Ohio State was up 21-0 on Tennessee first quarter, 14-0 first quarter against Oregon, 34-0 right after that. And here is Texas got big early leads against Clemson and Arizona State. They had a 21-point lead, and Arizona and Clemson cut it to one touchdown in the fourth quarter. They won by 2 touchdowns. And then last week, the Arizona State game, they're up 16 points in the second half and gave up 2 8-point touchdowns. And now it's, going to overtime. So Texas's problem is they're not a full 4-quarter team, a full 60-minute team. They haven't shown it in either playoff game yet. and they're going to need to play 60 great minutes of football to beat Ohio State today, even on home field advantage here for them. I think they're going to have about 2/3 of this crowd, probably close to 80,000 people here for this playoff game today, and I would bet they'll have 60 to 65% of the crowd probably favoring Texas here today.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's actually not terrible weather out today, but people getting in here, especially from
the flights,
right?
Yeah.
You're coming from Columbus, you're coming from Ohio, wherever. Certainly easier to drive from around Texas, though it is a big state.
Yeah.
And there was some bad weather, so it'll certainly be something to keep an eye on. But when you get to these neutral site games, it helps to have the crowd on your side. But there's enough Ohio State fans that even if it is pro-Texas, I don't think you'll hear it too much.
Yeah.
It's not like this will be packed with Texas fans. You mentioned the defense there, talking about Texas defense. For me, the zone and the way their aggressive zone, they keep everything in front. They get to the ball quick. You mentioned Anthony Hill, the linebacker.
Yes.
The cornerbacks are really good at that. Will Howard has to take what the defense gives him. I keep going back to that play against Penn State where he threw the pick six, and he doesn't see what's going to happen with the corner there. He's got to be better than that in this game.
Yeah.
And you mentioned some of the checkdowns, some of the short routes. There was a play against Oregon. There was a play against Oregon in the first half where Oregon, who played man most of that game and got burned, sat back in zone, and Jeremiah Smith found a hole. It was a short, probably 5-yard pass. I think he turned it into a bigger gain. But those will have to be key. I think Emeka Egbuka is very good at that. I think Jeremiah Smith has shown that he has the knowledge of how to do that.
Yeah.
I think Carnell Tate could be interesting today, just because he's not the guy that clearly everyone is focused on. Texas certainly is aware of him, but just numbers-wise, you're trying to target those other guys first.
No question about it. And I think, again, Carnell Tate's been kind of quiet here in the first two playoff games, and Egbuka has 1 touchdown between the 2 playoff games. Smith has 4.
Almost that first one in Tennessee.
He
got down to
he got it down to the 4-yard line, and then they ran it in, I think, 2 plays later. I want to see those guys and even G. Scott get involved in this game because I think it would be huge. Throw the ball to Henderson out of the backfield, get him in space, get him going down the sideline, the wheel route, the different ways that they've come up with to use him. I think it'll be interesting to see what Chip Kelly has in mind for that first series. To me, you always win the toss, you always defer, just to get the ball to start the second half. It'll probably happen that way again today if Ohio State wins the toss. But whoever scores the first touchdown in this game, there's going to be several touchdowns scored in this game. I had 34-26 was my score with Ohio State winning. But I think it's going to be a fun game and hopefully a much better 4-quarter game than what we saw out of the Penn State-Notre Dame game last night. I think that one put a lot of people to sleep in the first half.
Yeah.
And as bad as the first half was, the business definitely picked up in the second half. I think both teams realize this is for a spot in the national championship game. Everything we work for, everything we put in from really, the loser of this game is going to start right back up in 10 days, getting ready for next year. And so
ironically against the same team.
Yeah, they're going to play each other. Yeah, the loser of this game will play 2 consecutive games against the opponent today. So that's interesting. But, everything you work for from late January through spring football in April, the hot summer conditioning and everything else you do, throwing on air, everything you do, preseason camp, those games, so many games, have now been played by both these teams. And this is what it's all about, is to get to Atlanta next week and a date with Notre Dame to decide the national championship. And Ohio State is that team. They can realize that destiny. And these seniors from Ohio State have no trophies other than a couple Rose Bowl trophies. That's about it to show for it. And no championships, no conference, no Big Ten, no Michigan wins. No gold pants, no nothing. So they want the big one, and they're still in position to bring that one home. But they got to play great football today against a very good Texas team here in Arlington, Texas.
Yeah, I mean, look, you get to this point, you're playing a good team, right?
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's not easy once you get to a Final Four, so to speak. We talked a lot about Ohio State's offense versus Texas' defense. Let's flip it to the other side. Quinn Ewers obviously was a story all week. He got asked a lot about his time at Ohio State. It was he may have gotten more time asked about it than he actually spent in Columbus.
At Ohio State,
yeah,
yes.
4 months he was
one semester.
Yes. When you look at Texas offense, what scares you the most if you're an Ohio State defense?
Well, I'll tell you what, Matthew Golden, their wide receiver, he made big plays against Georgia. He made big plays against Clemson. He made big plays last week against Arizona State. I mean, he's an equal opportunity guy. And, they've got some talent, certainly, in their skill positions. And Ewers, if he is given time, can really pick Ohio State apart if he's given time. Now, Ohio State had 8 sacks last week against Oregon. I tend to doubt we'll see something along those lines today. But if they can even get 3 or 4 on him, that would be huge. And really to just disrupt his timing and disrupt his rhythm, get a hand in his face, get a hand up, because he will drop the arm level down from time to time, and those passes can be batted down. We've seen that Sawyer is a master at that. I think he knocked down 3 passes last week against Gabriel in Oregon. So to me, that's going to be something interesting to see, is if what they do with Ewers. But Ewers, when you think about this, and I've written a little bit about it, in Texas lore, he's right there with Colt McCoy. Had him on the cusp, had him right there on the verge of doing something really big. Playoffs back-to-back seasons. It was 14 playoff last year, and obviously the 12th team this year, semifinals both years. But he wants to be Vince Young. And Vince Young won the national championship at Texas, and Quinn Ewers can say, slide over, Mr. Young, if he can get 2 more wins. And that's the legacy he wants to leave at the University of Texas, because, homegrown guy, he wants to be thought of in those same situations. But again, they're going to have their hands full. This Ohio State defense, since the loss to Oregon in mid-October, has played lights out. I want to say they've given up about 12 points a game in the, 6, 7, 8 games that they played since 8 games since they played the game they lost to Oregon. It has been lights out. The pass rush has been dynamite. They don't get a lot of turnovers, and that's the one thing. They had 2 interceptions last week against Oregon from Gabriel that went off, I think, Downs' hands and Cody Simon's hands, and Jack Sawyer may have even had a small chance at one as well. It was would have been a tough play for him, but put one of those in your back pocket and get one today, and really change the complexion of this game and give Ohio State a short field. That would be huge. I mean, Ewers is not prone to throwing a lot of interceptions, but, I think if Ohio State is able to get after him, it's a possibility. So this is going to be such a fun game here tonight. I've been coming to these bowl games for 30 years, and nothing relates to this situation where you've already played 2 postseason games, and now you're playing a 3rd one to try and play a 4th one in 10 days down in Atlanta. This is an NFL type thing. And people say, they're paying them like NFL players now, whatever. But they're still 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old dudes. And this is a big, heavy ask, for these kids on both sides and all these teams that are this deep in the postseason now, to keep practicing, to keep playing. And I salute these guys for, really flipping the narrative on this year's Ohio State team. I think Emeka Egbuka put it best. He said, we've given Buckeye Nation 2 great wins here in the postseason, Tennessee and Oregon, but we just can't rest on that. We've got to do more. We have to win these next 2 games, he said, and obviously you've got to win this one first before you get to play Notre Dame. But, we are in for one heck of a treat tonight. And, I was at the Miami game way back 20-some years ago. That was amazing. National championship against Oregon, that Alabama Sugar Bowl. That's the kind of thing we're looking at here tonight, that type of thing. They've already beaten the number 1 team, so nothing left to do but to go out and win the whole freaking thing at this point.
It's funny you mentioned the NFL schedule. We are here in an NFL stadium. At least they get some sort of postseason here. The Dallas Cowboys, not the best year. You talking about run game for Ohio State. Texas has been very inconsistent.
Yeah.
Some games it's hitting. I asked their offensive coordinator, Kyle Flood, about it. Why has it been so inconsistent? And he just said it was down to execution. When they look at the film, he's like, there's not one thing that's been on and off for them, but it's just executing their job, especially up front. Guys got to recognize where to hit holes, things like that.
I think they're going to have one of their offensive linemen, Cam Williams, back in the lineup today, which will be huge. Trey Wisner and Quintravion Wisner And Jaden Blue, those two guys are outstanding running backs, but they are almost as involved in the pass game as well. And Ewers loves to throw the football to those guys and let them create the open field. So that is something where Sonny Styles, Cody Simon, the two linebackers, and Caleb Downs, the safety, are going to really have to earn their money today, defending the run and the pass with those running backs when they're in the game. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it'll certainly be interesting. Another thing that Ohio State could use, good special teams play. We've seen it up and down all year. We've seen the good in the punt returns, and so Caleb Downs in particular. We've seen some bad. We've seen some missed field goals. I do think it was important that Jaden Fielding kicked those two against Oregon.
Yeah,
kind of no pressure, but
get him back in the right frame of mind.
Exactly. So
their kicker, Auburn. He had a rough game against Arizona State. That was tough to see. The game's on the line and he's missing field goals, makeable field goals too, inside 40 yards. So yeah, we'll see if it comes down to him having to make a kick. Is he going to be the guy to do it?
Last thing, will we be in Atlanta?
Yes, I think Ohio State's going to win this game. My prediction was 34-26. Very entertaining type game. A lot of yardage, a lot of points. And, these teams have played 3 times all time. The first one was one of the great Ohio Stadium epics, if you didn't care that Ohio State lost the game 25-22 to the aforementioned Vince Young. The play that sticks in my memory is everybody knows about Anthony Schlegel, just, the reputation, this tough linebacker. He came on a blitz, and of course he's a Texan, so he wanted to win that game more than anybody. He comes on a blitz, and he just bounced right off of Vince Young, and Vince Young took the football and threw it straight down the middle of the field for a 50-yard gain, and they dragged the guy down at like the 1-yard line, and Texas scored right after that. That's a play that sticks with me from that game. Obviously, Ohio State paid them back in kind the following year down in Austin, and I want to tell you that was one of the great settings I've been for a college football game. Austin, Texas, and Darrell K. Royal Stadium, 24-7. Troy Smith, Ted Ginn Jr., I think they just scored again, 24-7. They won. It was a rough night that night for McCoy. McCoy was not the man at that point. He was just
first or second game, right?
Yeah, first or second game. But he got his revenge 2 years later in the Fiesta Bowl. McCoy did, let him down the field.
That prevent defense.
Yeah. I'm not going to name the DBs involved in that horror, but they know who they are. They'll remain nameless. But, they scored a touchdown with about 30 seconds to go. And that was one of those cases where you see sometimes Boom Herron scored a touchdown with about a minute and a half to go for Ohio State when all they needed was to kick a field goal. He could have gone down.
Texas let him score.
Texas let him score to get the ball back, and then they went down and took it in for the touchdown. So to win the game at 24-21. A crazy game. I think Todd Beckman hadn't played all year, after the USC loss that year. They turned it over to Terrell Pryor. And Todd Beckman threw a touchdown pass to Terrell Pryor, who would become an NFL wide receiver of some repute.
For the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, my Cleveland Browns later on, but and about 10 other teams too. But, we won't get into all that. But, it's been a great rivalry. They're going to play the next 2 years. And, with the 12-team playoff, we want to see more games like that in the regular season. We don't want to see them playing Florida A&M and Charlotte and, some of these other teams that are on the schedule. I think Grambling is on the schedule next year. And so with the 12-team playoff, you can afford to play a marquee non-conference game and still play a 9-game Big Ten schedule and still get to the 12-team playoff, as Ohio State did this year with 2 losses. So, we'll see certainly what transpires in the years to come. But tonight, it's all about getting to the ATL, and I'm booked. I don't know about you, Murph. I've got a flight. When they win one game, you book the flight for the next game. That way you're ready just in case. We've got 1,000 people online watching this right now. And Buckeye Nation, what can we say? Thanks for sending us down here. And we are going to have all the coverage of this Titanic struggle here a little bit later. Kickoff set for 7:45 Eastern time tonight. So you got about 2.5 hours to get your affairs in order. So here we go.
Yep. Well, after the game, Dave Biddle will have What We Learned live right here on all those platforms. We'll both jump on once we're done with post-game stuff to talk about this game. we hope we're talking about a Buckeye win because, like Steve said, we're booked for Atlanta. We plan to be there. Now the Buckeyes have to go out and get it done. Thanks to all you for jumping on. Hope we gave you some info before this game kicks off.
Enjoy the game.
Right down there, yeah. Enjoy it. Enjoy it. Thanks, guys.